Welcome to Hiking My Feelings TV.
All right, so let's start with the story time. So Trail of Life is inspired, like the name of this exercise slash workshop slash framework slash way of thinking, way of life, is inspired by my book. But the first time that I ever did this, like formally, was when I was getting ready to join my first skydiving team. So my skydiving coach was like, okay, I want you to go through and make a timeline and just write down all the times you were ever part of a team in your life, sports teams, creative teams, work teams, whatever, and think about the different attributes that you brought to a team. Think about the ways that you showed up that you would change differently or do differently now that you know better. And so if you've ever been in like a traditional clinical therapy setting, this is also like a trauma timeline, but there's so much more to life than just the bad stuff that we've been through. So that's why we kind of like to think of it as the trail of life. Like these are all things that we've all been through, and the thing that we all have in common, while we are all born on different foundations from which to make choices and have experiences, the thing that we all have in common is no matter what life dealt us, we are all right here, right now, today, and we've survived it. You can turn literally anything into an opportunity for self-reflection, growth, and exploration. And the questions that can contribute to that, I started in the context of hiking, and then I was like, wait a minute, this could go for everything. So outside of tracking like the statistics of a hike, like you can say what kind of trail you did, how far you went, the elevation gain, whatever else you track. Like for me, when I was first diagnosed with diabetes, like I kept track of my snacks, I kept track of my water, I kept track of my blood sugar numbers so I could understand all the different factors that contributed to what the numbers on the screen of my glucometer. Outside of that, one of the questions that I asked myself is like, what were my biggest wins? And that can go on and off the trail, right? So like, what were your biggest wins to get from Quail Springs to here? You're celebrating. People asked you and you felt comfortable talking about it, like that's a pretty big win. You came away with a takeaway of something that you can take home to invite people to give them an opportunity to celebrate, since some people celebrate themselves unprompted, but I think a lot of us don't. And because it hasn't been modeled for us, so we need like that nudge, that permission to celebrate. So what were my biggest wins? What lessons did I learn? And sometimes you learn lessons, sometimes you don't. Sometimes the lesson that you learn is like, I wouldn't do that trail again. Or if you're reflecting on like a life activity or like the end of a relationship or a career transition, you're like, going back to the data stuff, like these are the things I liked about this opportunity, this relationship, this person. These are the things that I didn't like and that are now non-negotiables for me. So like in the context of career or relationships, what are the things about that person or that relationship or that job where you were like, I would love to have this in every job, relationship, whatever, moving forward. And then you have like your list of things that you love. And it's kind of like pros and cons. It's kind of like likes and dislikes. But you can do this for like every aspect of your life. And when you do, even just by like giving yourself the opportunity to think about the wins out of any kind of situation, like that's mindfulness. It's that simple. You don't have to be at a monastery or a yoga studio or on top of Samuelson's Rocks and Joshua Tree. Like you can go do this in the car after you get off a hard conversation. You're like, okay, what went well? Like that was hard. I'm crying. I've got snot running down my face, but like what went well? I stood up for myself, whatever. Like just getting in the mindset of thinking of these questions and having the awareness of these questions is mindfulness. Like I think we have this like highfalutin idea of what a mindful person looks like or what an enlightened person looks like. And none of us walked the exact same path to get from Quail Springs to here. And none of us will live the same life before we die. And none of us will do our jobs the same. None of us will be in friendships or relationships or show up the same. But if we have these kinds of questions in mind and this kind of awareness of how we show up or how we want to show up, if we're in a stage of growth where we're like, ooh, I was gross in that job. Like I had some unresolved trauma. I didn't realize that like I felt insecure about my performance, whatever it is. Something we like to say a lot here is like the awareness is the work. Sometimes just being aware of a thing that you want to change is doing the work because you don't always have the how or the who. You don't know how to fix it. You don't know who's going to help you find your way through it. But having the awareness is mindfulness. It's not like some highfalutin thing up on top of a mountain somewhere. It doesn't have to be. That up because yesterday we did a lot of the like we're walking the wash and we're like, ooh, this is nice. And then we did some like traversing the desert and everybody was kind of like we were spread out but not strewn out, right? Like we were like moving. Nobody walked in the exact same footprints of the other people. And that was one of the things I was going to bring up today is like there's a lot, and we've said it a couple times this weekend, like there's a lot of ways to live a life. There's a lot of ways to get from point A to point B. And to Barry's point, if you're so focused on the path that maybe that's your parents' expectations, maybe that's society's expectations, maybe it's the masks you wear, the hats you wear at work or in life. If you're so focused on this thing that you think you must do, and it's one, if it's not yours that you've created, then that is its own blinder. But two, you might miss a zip line or a swirly slide or... So for this retreat in Joshua Tree National Park, it's our last retreat of the year. We were talking about the trail of life, and when we do the trail of life, we talk about rainbows and waterfalls. Rainbows are high points, waterfalls are points that made our faces cry, and on the way out of the park, look at what we got. It's a big old rainbow. Isn't that neat? What'd you think, Mr. Williams?
Dug it.
Pretty good retreat?
It's a great way to finish off the year.
I would say so. We're ending the year on a rainbow.
Yeah.